The first round of the playoffs could end for a couple of teams in the OHL's Western Conference as early as tonight. We have two game fours where the Saginaw Spirit, they could sweep the Owen Sound Attack with a win, and the Sioux Greyhounds also in a position to sweep the Guelph Storm. All depends on the outcome tonight, but how it looks right now, we could be looking at a West Division classic between the Spirit and the Greyhounds in the second round. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. I wanted to continue the series I started yesterday, looking at teams that are already planning ahead for the offseason. Now, we've got four teams, of course, that didn't make the playoffs. They did the draft lottery a week ago. And yesterday, I started this series talking about the Niagara Ice Dogs. And I know I cover the Barrie Colts as the play-by-play voice on Rogers TV, but I think it's kind of important to be aware of what's going on around the rest of the Ontario Hockey League. And I think this is just a great avenue to be able to have conversations and to see what's going on around the other 20 or the other 19 teams around the league. So today, going to be talking about the Windsor Spitfires. They're next on the list. They finished 19th last season. So they they did fall off from what they saw a year ago because everything in junior hockey is about the cycle. And for the Spitfires, they're a team right now that's starting over. They're in the rebuild phase after missing the playoffs. And they're a team that's had tremendous success over the last 15 years. This organization, the fan base, they've been kind of spoiled compared to some other teams around the Ontario Hockey League. Just off the top of my head, thinking of the Sudbury Wolves, who haven't been to the OHL final since 2007. That's when they lost to the Plymouth Whalers in that OHL championship. But for Windsor, over the last 15 years, they've had two OHL championships, 3 Memorial Cup titles. They've been to the OHL final 3 times. Their most recent trip was in 2022 when they lost in Game 7 to the Hamilton Bulldogs, came that close. And they've only missed the playoffs twice since the 2009-2010 run. So this organization has had a lot of success on the ice. I know there have been a couple of scenarios off the ice which resulted in sanctions. We're not going to dive into that. But this is a team coming into this season. There were a few question marks. They hired Jared Smith as their new head coach in the offseason, replacing Mark Savard. And they was kind of wondering, okay, what direction is this team going to go? Because, like I said, Windsor, they went to the OHL final in 2022. In 2023, they were first in the Western Conference, but then were swept in the first round by the Kitchener Rangers. So a bit of a shock last year in the playoffs. And then this year, they just didn't get the start they were wanting because a lot of people considered Windsor to be a team that would challenge for a playoff spot. They'd be kind of in the bottom 3, bottom 4 area, potentially in the conference. Off the hop, they also traded Nick DeAngelis to the Sudbury Wolves, and that kind of showed the signs that this team was looking to the future. And it was a really good trade for Windsor if you look at it. DeAngelis and Trevor Odell, they headed up to Sudbury for 5 draft picks. And that includes the Niagara Ice Dogs' second-round pick for 2024. And, of course, the Ice Dogs, they finished last in the league. So that means that second-round pick is going to be pretty high for the Windsor Spitfires. So they kind of won out on that situation. And also, when they started the year, wins were becoming a bit of a problem. They were giving up a lot of goals. Jared Smith, he was let go and replaced by interim head coach Casey Torres. That was at the end of November, and they had a long losing streak at that point, and just nothing seemed to be going right. And I know the fan base in Windsor were a little frustrated by some of those outcomes, as it just seemed like every shot was going in at times. Or I know that wasn't the case, but it kind of felt like that, as it was just not getting done. And things kind of improved a little bit after that, and then once they were officially eliminated from the playoffs, that's when the Windsor Spitfires then bottomed out to the bottom of the Western Conference standing. So the Spitfires, they did show some signs of life there under Torres, and that's a big question for the summer. Will Casey Torres be named head coach, or does Bill Bowler, the GM, look elsewhere for a new head coach? I think that's going to be very fascinating to follow, on top of the fact that they won the OHL draft lottery, so they have the number 1 pick. And I think that's going to help them turn this thing around pretty quick because they already have some great talent up front. It was just the goals against. That's what sunk them. They were a league worst 360 goals against. That's 37 more goals allowed than Niagara, who gave up 323. And of course, they finished below Windsor in the standings. But offensively, the Spitfires were not that bad. They had 247 goals for this past season, which is more than Guelph, Owen Sound, Flint, and Barrie. And of course, all those teams made the playoffs. And that's why I kind of think Windsor, they will return to the postseason next year. I think they're going to be more competitive. I'm not going to say they're going to go on a deep run or maybe challenge for top spot in the West Division, but they should be in that playoff picture a year from now. It's just if they can get their defensive game figured out, maybe address the goaltending as well, I don't see why not. Why this Windsor Spitfire team could be in the playoffs in a year from now. It's kind of like with the Erie Otters. Last year, they ended up winning the first overall pick. They picked up Matthew Schaefer, first overall, and he's actually fitting quite nicely. He's had a good playoff series so far against Kitchener Rangers, and that's a team that they had the first overall pick. Things fell into place, and now we're looking at an Erie Otters team that finished 5th in the Western Conference standings. And I don't see why Windsor can't follow that path going into next season. And when you look at the top 10 scorers for the Windsor Spitfires in 2023-24, what stands out is Liam Greentree. He was outstanding. 36 goals, 54 assists, good for 90 points. And that's pretty good on a team that's been struggling. And that's why I say it was the goals against that really sunk this Windsor Spitfires team. Offensively, with a guy like Greentree, they have a lot of potential. And of course, Greentree expected to be a first-round pick for the NHL draft in June. So a lot of potential there for Windsor. And then after that, Ryan Abraham, 31 goals, 35 assists, good for 66 points. So you had 2 players who scored over 30 goals this season in the end. Valentine Jugan, they picked him up from the Saginaw Spirit. He had 23 goals, 26 assists, good for 49 points. And then you have your rookie, Cole Davis. He had 20 goals this season, 21 assists, good for 41 points. It's good to see one of your rookies being there in the top 5 and scoring at the end of the regular season. AJ Spellacy, he had a good season, 21 goals, 17 assists, 38 points. So you see there, you've got 5 players who scored 20 or more goals this season for the Spitfires. I think they've got the offensive talent, and that's why I think this team could challenge for a playoff spot in a year from now. And then you've got on the back end, Anthony Cristoforo, 7 goals, 31 assists, as he had a great season as well. And then you've got Noah Morneau, 13 goals, 21 assists, 34 points. Another rookie, Carson Woodall, he had 6 goals, 23 assists, good for 29 points. Colton Smith, 13 goals, 15 assists, good for 28 points. And then another rookie, Jack Nesbitt, rounding out the top 10, 9 goals, 9 assists, 18 points. So you've got 3 rookies who are in the top 10 in scoring. And I think that's all very positive signs for Windsor going forward. And we found out the OHL coaches poll yesterday. Cole Davis, the rookie, he was getting some attention as a rookie forward. He was named the 3rd most underrated player in the Western Conference, which is huge praise for Cole Davis going forward. And then, of course, Liam Greentree, he was voted 3rd most dangerous player in the goal area. So you've got Davis, you've got Greentree, and then you add whoever this first overall pick may be. If they do decide to go with a forward, they could have a really solid top 6. And I think for Windsor Spitfire fans, they want to forget about this season, but you get the pain and then you're going to get the gain. That's basically where it's going to come to for this Windsor Spitfire team. And with that first overall pick, we're still not 100% sure which direction they're going to go. There's a few players that are being considered as maybe they get picked first overall. And we'll have to wait and see on that front. But GM Bill Bowler, he does have a lot of question marks going into this offseason. We already touched on the head coach. Do they keep Torres? Do they look elsewhere? And then the overager situation is also going to be fascinating because here are the eligible players as OAs next year. Starting off, you've got Noah Morneau. Valentine Jugan, he's a very interesting one because he's also an import. You don't typically see overage imports, and because of where Windsor fell in the standings, they're going to get they have potential to pick 2 great imports at the import draft. So I'm not sure if Valentine Jugan will stick around or if they can find another landing spot for him. For the Barrie Colts, they had Artur Cholach, who could have been an overager this season, but he would have also taken that import spot. So Cholach ended up moving on, and in the end, I think the Barrie Colts could have used him because they still had 2 import spots after the trade deadline, and they had 2 overagers, but that's besides the point. So that's going to be a tough call for the Windsor Spitfires. Also eligible, Ryan Struthers, Colton Smith, and Connor Toms. Connor Toms, they picked him up from the Sioux Greyhounds during the regular season. So we'll have to wait and see which one of those stick around. Of course, you're only allowed to play 3 overagers in a game, but you can hold more than that for the first half of the season. So a lot of tough questions going forward for Windsor. And then even in goaltending, they do have Joey Costanzo. He's a 2005. He appeared in 39 games this season, a record of 10, 23, 2-1, an 885 save percentage. That's his lowest save percentage in junior hockey so far. And I'm thinking they're going to look to have someone to work with Costanzo, or if they want to bring up one of their young prospects that could take that backup role. But we'll have to wait and see. The Windsor Spitfires, I think, are going to be a fascinating bunch, but they're going to be able to, I think, turn this team around pretty quick. And it will be interesting, too, to see who do they select first overall. That draft will take place, of course, next Friday, April 12th. And what's interesting, too, is this is the first time that Windsor is picking first overall since 1976, and they selected Jim Fox in that draft, and he never suited up for Windsor. He ended up playing with the Ottawa 67s. So this could be the first overall pick to ever suit up with the Windsor Spitfires that they drafted, which I think is pretty exciting. And to note, I will be doing an interview with someone who has been following the under-16s quite a bit this season. Expect that interview to be posted on the channel early next week. This scout, he was at the OHL Cup. He's going to share his thoughts on the players there and his thoughts on who potentially could go in the top 3 at the OHL draft next Friday. So you'll want to hit subscribe to stay tuned for that. But really, I think this Windsor Spitfire team has a lot of potential. We saw Sault Ste. Marie miss the playoffs last year and then bounce back and finish 3rd overall in the Western Conference. Could Windsor do that? I think there's a chance. And I think this Windsor team could be a lot more competitive next year as long as they figure out the defensive systems and keep the puck out of the net. You've got the scoring. You just need the defensive systems, and I think that'll go a long way for Windsor. So let me know in the comment section down below your thoughts on the Windsor Spitfires moving forward. If you're a Spitfire fan, what are you excited about for this team going forward? Or what would you like to see addressed to maybe improve this team? Or who do you think gets selected first overall? Love to see the interactions. And if you've made it this far on the channel, thank you for your support. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you again soon.